Yo, parish orphans and retrogrades. Hope you are out there having an excellent Fat Tuesday. And most of all, preparing your hearts for the somber holiness of the Lenten season, the ultimate penitential season in the church, which begins tomorrow. As part of your preparation for penance, Pope Francis is continuing to pave the way to HE double hockey sticks with tons of fiddling with doctrine. Most recently, on February the 8th, as it happens, I brought you a show on a recent gathering 2 or 3 days before that on the Council of C9, 9 cardinals that overheard the testimony of 3 feminist apologists within the church, one of whom was named Linda Pocher. Now, I did that whole show on February the 8th saying, look, Francis continues to move the ball toward the goal. And she says Francis is, now it's come to light in a review of that meeting that he's very much in favor of the female diaconate, end quote. This is that nun claim who was invited to address the Vatican cardinals, Sister Linda Pocher, who was recently asked by Pope Francis to address a group of leading cardinals some day, 2 or 3 days before the 8th, the 4th or the 5th of February, on the role of women in the church, saying that Francis is very much in favor of it, the female diaconate. Now, there's this hilarious and hilariously frustrating tendency on the part of the credulous, or if you ask them, the incredulous, the Pope-splainers, to characterize people like me, but especially me, in 2 polarizing ways. When Francis moves into a period of relative silence, defensive silence, to cover for his last big gambit or chess move, poker play, they'll say, oh, you're imagining stuff. You just imagine stuff, Tim and other trads who are critics of Francis. He hasn't done anything for a month that resembles revolution in the church. But then they dither to the opposite perspective when Francis is actively making said gambits and poker plays. When he's making big, obvious moves and meeting with feminists who are coming away from the meeting saying he's very much in favor of the female diaconate. I'm going to read you the whole Lifeside article that was up yesterday, specifying what she said and what the context out of which what she said grew. Here's the interesting, really interesting thing that's very specific to a prediction that I made in late September, and I've recounted it a few different times. Here's what it was. She adds, I'll get to this in its due course, but this is the highlight of the article for me. I called that Francis is going to quasi-ordain female deacons using vague ambiguity that's not so vague, where he'll put his hands on the head of a male deacon and also maybe touch with his elbows or something. I'm just taking a guess, and I always have been, touching the deacon's wife and call the deacon's wife something like subdeacon or some term that's stripped of its historical context but is already a term, and then give the full ergonomic functionality of deacon to the deacon's wife. And then have all of the echo chamber argue against the sounding board in the public as to whether or not women have just been ordained. That's going to happen sometime, probably in early 2024. It could be any day, any week, any month. It'll definitely be ahead of October 2024, and I'll specify why using the words of Linda Pocher in a second. The church will have de facto female deacons sometime in 2024, and I already told you this, and it'll be with bodily, postural ambiguities of ordination, with no real ergonomic functional ambiguities on the part of the women. They're going to be an expanded role. They will be doing the roles of deacons. The sole question will be, is this a violation of Pope John Paul II's Ordinatio Sacerdotalis? Toward the end of his pontificate, he actually made what many say is an infallible claim: women can never be deacons. That's what they're stumbling around. Okay? So there will be this bodily ambiguity. And listen to what Pocher said, Pocher, whatever this feminist Catholic woman's name is, who's a nun. She added that Francis, quote, is changing the way of thinking and living the difference between the ordained ministry and the baptismal priesthood. Isn't that exactly what I told you he would do? To the letter. Extending to all the baptized some rights that until recently belonged to bishops, priests, or religious. So the ergonomics of a bishop will be changed so that women can do them. But they're not just going to change the ergonomics and say, but women remain unordained. They're going to make the ordination of women as deacons ambiguous. This is what they're cooking up with their little sophistical groups right now. The ergonomics will be clear, 100%. Women are doing the roles of deacons. The sacramental formalism will be thrown into a doubtful light. That's what will happen. I told you all along. I want to read this. He's changing the way, according to Pocher, of thinking and living the difference between the ordained ministry and the baptismal priesthood. In other words, all of us are priests insofar as we're baptized. That is St. Paul in the Bible, played upon by Luther and other liars in the early modern era, priesthood of all believers. And she's using that lie of Luther playing upon St. Paul in Scripture to fudge to this ergonomic / anatomical quasi-ordination that is going to be extended in a few months to women. And then you could say, holy cow, how did you know, Tim? What are you? Are you some sort of, CIA operative? No. Francis is just very, very predictable. And this brings me to, now that you have his close confidants and nuns and people who are on the C9 Council of Cardinals saying that Francis is really interested in doing all this bad stuff, this is that other polar moment where Pope-splainers, instead of them in moments of ostensible orthodoxy for Francis, where he's just not talking much, in the heterodox moments, they transition to coping with me just reading the facts or other trads just reading the facts by going, oh, you probably are enjoying this, aren't you? So when Francis does something openly heterodox that they can't deny, which he's in the midst of doing, they say, oh, you're enjoying this, aren't you? I hope you're enjoying it. I mean, Vindication's always enjoyable. I told you he's going to do all this bad stuff, and he's doing it. That doesn't mean I want him to do the bad stuff. And you know this, right? When you say, what's the climate? It's bad, getting worse. And I'm going to tell you exactly how worse it's getting. If I'm a meteorologist, I don't mean warming. I just mean expect a month of crappy weather. If I'm a meteorologist and I call huge F4 tornadoes in 2 Tuesdays, and they happen, it doesn't mean I'm happy that they happen, but it does mean I'm good at my job. There's a difference there. And ordinarily, anybody who's honest, so this excludes the topmost Pope-splainers. They're not honest. They're dishonest people. They understand this distinction. Well, most people have a job that in one way or another deals with a human externality, human pain, human suffering. It's pain and suffering to have to deal with this Pope, to have to call out accurately what he's doing and where he's trying to go. So there's sweetness in any kind of vindication, even when you said something bad's going to happen, and it does, which is what's happened to me consistently over the last 3 years. I tell you what Francis is going to do, and then he goes and does it. I told you that with regard to the LMNOPSS blessings. But I'm not reading Nostradamus' tea leaves. I'm literally looking at movies like Francesco and him saying, we need to change global lawfare. Well, in such moments, I'm not enjoying the evil that Francis is working on the world, and I'm not even very defensive of it. I am enjoying the vindication that comes from rubbing in the dirt the nose of Pope-splainers who said, Francis is never going to ordain women or anything like it. Well, he's going to do something darn tootin' like it. And I told you exactly what he's going to do. I didn't say it's going to be actual ordination that's identical to real male deacons. I'm just saying he wants to push this heresy. So we're going to hear from Linda Pocher today, the nun who says Francis definitely knows where he wants to go. He's planning it now, and he's using the study commissions sophistically to accomplish sophistry, which I've talked about a lot in the last month or two. The study commissions, well, we know human beings can't fly by flapping their wings. Well, they don't have wings, by flapping their arms. But we want to study it anyway. We know they'll never fly, but we want to study it. Well, that doesn't make any sense. What they really mean in the 2014 and 2015 synod, when Francis and his cronies said, we know the civilly divorced and remarried can never receive communion unless they return to their real spouse. But we want to study it. What that really meant is we're going to find a way using sophistry to actually move a red poker chip across the table in front of your very eyes and tell you at the same time we're not moving this red poker chip toward you. You're watching them. It's not a sleight of hand, it's a sleight of words. So that's what we now know. You're an idiot if you don't know it in 2024, or you just weren't paying attention. That Francis will do precisely what he says he's not doing. As he says he's not doing it, he's doing it. I will not slide this, Steph, this pencil across the table at you. I'm not doing that. Anyway, that's today's show. Linda Pocher gives some more key head fakes and telegraphs as to where she's going to pass the ball here, where Francis is going to pass the ball. In the meanwhile, I would just have you know that if you're a regular viewer of this program, Rules for Retrogrades, on the Timothy Gordon YouTube channel, we are embarrassingly so at 49.9K subs. We have a huge show planned for you at 50K subs. I thought that show was going to transpire last week, or maybe even the week before. And our growth on YouTube, which had been flourishing over the last 2 months, especially, just died. So if you're watching right now and you're not subscribed, please, for heaven's sakes, do subscribe. Click the notification bell, like this video, and comment on this video. There's plenty to say in the world today. Comment, interact with us. Also, help yourself by getting out of your blue state before the general election of 2024. Get to a red state if you're a Christian or a conservative in any wise, under any color. Get out if you can, get out while you still can. Go to www.realestateforlife.org and get to a red state. It's literally what I did. And I had a go plan, knowing I would be fired eventually, knowing I would be canceled, because I'm not going to bite my tongue. I had a go bag. I had a go plan. That's what you should do. And part of it should be realestateforlife.org. If you want to support this program, there's only two ways. They're attached to this video. Locals and Subscribe Star. You get something in return for supporting us. You get extra benefits. You get to see stuff early. You get to know stuff early in some cases. And lots of times you get books and signed material. If you want to support me, that's a totally different thing. That's a donative. And most people ask, how can I support you? Because we know about Abby. It's had multiple brain surgeries. A new one always hangs around the corner of life's landscape like the sword of Damocles. Any day could bring an Abby surgery. Thank goodness. She's almost been 4 years without another big surgery after April 6th, 2020. But she could always have one. People want to donate for that, go to timothyjgordon.com. That's just donative. Get nothing for that. Strictly Gordon family, Gordon kids, Gordon funds. Okay, so once you're subscribed to the channel everyone who's watching right now, hopefully, is doing this. We're ready to go. We're ready to have our 50,000 sub show. It's going to be a big show. It's going to be a lot of fun. Have 2 big announcements to make. Have a bunch of big guests that are probably just waiting in the wing now because I got them all ready to call in. And most importantly for you, you can call into the channel. I'm going to give you a number, a hotline number. You can call in and we can interact live. It's better than just leaving a comment. That's going to be a modality we will recur to on Fridays, maybe every other Friday. But the first one will be the 50K show. So this article on LifeSite up yesterday, I want to give them credit because LifeSite's the main place I go to get my info. And it's key to this show. What do you know? So, Pope Francis is very much in favor of the female diaconate, claims none invited to address Vatican cardinals. In review, I did a show, I guess 5 days ago. I thought it was a little longer than that, on February the 8th, giving you a preliminary report of this meeting before all the details leaked out. Sister Linda Pocher, I'm just going with the CH sound. Sister Linda Pocher, who was recently asked by Pope Francis to address a group of leading cardinals on the role of women in the church, said that Francis, quote, is very much in favor of the female diaconate. A nun who recently addressed Pope Francis and his C9 group of cardinals attests Francis is very much in favor of the female diaconate, though has no immediate plans to implement it. We probably need to talk about this. Probably need to talk about what this means, has no immediate plans to implement it. So that's the first thing that I'll address once. I wanted to go through this article because there's so much gold in it. The no immediate plans to implement just means that there is a study commission currently in the offing, currently more than in the offing, that's currently meeting. The study commission has been meeting, and we're going to get 2 key red letter dates at the end of this article, which is why I want to read the full thing. There are no actual finalized plans for this thing as of now, but that's what is being changed. We already know, she says, that Pope Francis is very much in favor of the female diaconate, but it is still something we are trying to understand how to put into practice. Hold the phone, stop, period. Everyone listen. Pope splainers, you know, show them this 30 seconds of the show. Hold it right there, freeze frame. Do we have that record scratch sound? We need the record scratch sound. I thought we had it. That is the moment for the record scratch. Let me reread this. We already know that Pope Francis is very much in favor of the female diaconate, but it is still something we are trying to understand how to put into practice. There it is. There it is. Specifically but it is still something we are trying to understand how to put into practice. See, how did she just, you leave it to a lady. God love them. We love the ladies here at Rules for Retrogrades. We do. Can't live without them. But Pope Francis is now feeling the polar opposite of that. So sometimes it's hard to live with him, Pope Francis says, because she just said the quiet part out loud. With study commissions in enacting the Sankt Gallen Mafia agenda over the last 11 years, Pope Francis has said all but 5 of these words about given topics. You understand what I mean by that? We already know that the Pope is very much in favor of communion for the divorced and civilly remarried. Everyone knew that, even at the beginning of the pontificate. But Cardinal Casper often said things like this: it is still something we are trying to understand, period. You leave it to a man, very clever man like Cardinal Walter Casper, who's in Francis's crew of, in his brain trust of the heterodox. They stop after how to understand. We're trying to understand. You talk to Father James Martin S.J. or Tucho Fernandez or Cardinal Thupich, you talk to any of these guys and they'll say, we already know that the Pope is very much in favor of SS unions. But it is still something we are trying to understand, full stop. Right? Only once Francis is undertaken to speak with Linda Pocher did she accidentally add the most honest 5 words. See, full honesty is not welcome here. She didn't say, we already know that the Pope is very much in favor of the female diaconate, but it is still something we are trying to understand. No, she said it is still something we are trying to understand how to put into practice. Well, that's too much honesty. You don't say the whole truth, Miss Pocher. You just cooked Francis's eggs. If people were listening with ears attuned to the truth the way they were at the beginning of the Francis pontificate before everyone went into denial mode. You understand the difference? The study commission, the Sankt Gallen Mafia study commission that is so central to all the revolution that he's brought, to all of these Gallen agenda items, adultery, you know, giving communion to adulterers, blessing SS unions, female deacons, viri probati, which is gonna be addressed in 2024 too, and number 5, let's just say intercommunion with Lutherans, according to Walter Brandmuller. All of these have to be like yes, no, yes, no, yes, no, yes, no. Put all the normies to sleep. After they're all asleep, you say yes. The answer is yes. And the way that you buy, the way you purchase, if you're Francis in the Gallen group, the way you purchase their willingness to sort of patiently sit there and watch you dither, yes, no, yes, yes, no, yes, no, is by saying, look, the Catholic answer is no to this question of doctrinal revolution. We are no, but we just want to have these study commissions that the C9 oversees, Council of 9 Cardinals oversees, in order to better understand it. Why not? Can you fly with your arms? No. Yeah, but I'm going to spend all this time in fiduciary resources on studying why I can't fly with my arms. We already know. All he means is it is still something we're trying to understand how to put into practice. In other words, how to cook up the actual sophistry sufficiently just this side north of incredible, sufficiently credible, I guess, to fool the idiot pope-splainers and normies out there, like they did with Amoris Laetitia. If you believe Amoris Laetitia didn't mean communion for the divorced and civilly remarried, then I have a pack of Wolverines that I want to sell you for house pets. You know, then you must have been born yesterday. You ain't going to make it. And Pope Francis, he's never kind to those whom are loyal to him, because then he made a mockery of you. In April of 2016, when he published Amoris Laetitia, and several of you defiled yourselves saying, no, this doesn't mean what it says. Well, then 5.5 months later, you know what he did. He magisterialized the teaching. He put it into the Acta Apostolicae Sedis. This is the only correct interpretation. So it's never like he rewards you for your slavish loyalty. And by slavish loyalty, I don't mean what the Orthodox say about all Catholics. I have a loyalty to the Pope too. That doesn't mean that our loyalty is slavish to the extent that we don't believe in the principle of contradiction. You see, you're always going to get burned when you try to lie for a worldly master. And yes, you guys do make a worldly master of even the Pope. He's not Jesus. He's the Vicar of Christ, though I was reminded after last show, he says he's not the Vicar of Christ. Oh my gosh. I'll go on in this Lifeside article. Speaking to Europa Press on February the 8th, that's the very day I did my show, the last show on this topic. Pocher, daughter of Mary, Help of Christians, and professor of Christology and Mariology at the Pontifical Faculty of Educational Sciences Auxilium in Rome, revealed inside details about the recent C9 meeting of Pope Francis's close advisors. That's funny because I wasn't able to find those inside details that day. A lot of times it takes a few days to get translated into English. Also, what do you think about having a professor of Christology? That sounds like a woman bringer of the word at seminary. Faithful women PhDs, please don't teach at seminaries or pontifical schools about Mariology or Christology. This violates the gospel. It just does. Not necessarily getting the PhD, but you're tempted to violate it once you have it. The meeting had continued looking at the C9's current theme of the role of women in the church. There's only one goal here. And it included Anglican female bishop Jo Bailey Wells as one of 3 women who gave testimonies to the assembled group. I want to read from that related Lifeside article in a second. But Pocher attested, importantly, that the diaconate was also discussed during the meeting. She admitted that the diaconate is being discussed. How gaslit are you people that are, trad or trad adjacent? Whereupon they're making these public admissions. The only people who read Catholic news have access to LifeSite and such articles. And she's saying the diaconate was discussed. We are planning to do it. We're just looking for a way where we can do it. That's it. That's the only reason we don't yet have this. We are looking, this is all the subtext. The undeniable, objective subtext. The only reason that we do not in early February 13th, year of our Lord, 2024, have yet have female deacons is because we haven't cooked enough yet. But we're cooking. Do you guys not get how crazy this is? The diaconate was also discussed during the meetings. Now, I'll return to this Lifeside article, but because we mentioned the female Anglican bishop who addressed Pope Francis, I want to hear from you guys. How do you work having female Anglican bishops? So this is another Lifeside article. She addresses Francis and cardinal advisors on the role of women in the church. This article is from February the 6th on LifeSite. What would I do without LifeSite? Catholics couldn't have a stronger signal that Bergoglio is planning the faux ordination of women deacons with a trajectory towards the faux ordination of women priests and bishops, Deacon Nick Donnelly wrote. Yeah, this is how incrementalism works. A female Anglican prelate, there should be scare quotes around that, gave a speech to Pope Francis and his cardinal councils on Monday, Council of Cardinals on Monday, as part of the group's discussions on the role of women in the church. On February the 5th, the Vatican released images and sparse details about the current Council of Cardinals meeting that is being held at the Vatican, revealing that the group was addressed by 3 women during their discussions. According to details provided by Vatican News, Reverend Dr. Jo Bailey Wells, Bishop of the Church of England and Deputy Secretary General of the Anglican Communion, was one of 3 women who addressed the meeting. Joining Wells in addressing the group were 2 Catholic religious. Sister, you know her, Linda Pocher, daughter of Mary Help of Christians and professor of Christology Mariology at the Pontifical Faculty of Educational Sciences Auxilium in Rome, and Giulivia di Berardino, a consecrated woman of the Ordo Virginum of the Diocese of Verona, a teacher and head of spirituality courses and spiritual exercises. That sounds darkling. The C9, this is the second article still. The C9, as the group is known, Council of 9 Cardinals, is continuing the examination of the role of women in the church, a subject it began discussing in December 2023. It's actually far before that, prior to that, previous to that. I'll, when I get back to the other article, substantiate when they really began meeting. The timing of such discussions is significant, given that the 2023 Synod on Synodality interim report highlighted an urgent call for canon law to be changed in order to allow more female governance roles. They're changing the church in order to allow more women in. Such themes from the Synod have been emerging in the form of calls for female deacons, a topic that makes Wells' presentation to the Pope and his C9 group even more significant. While no precise information was given about the nature of her address, which is what I wanted in this, Wells' entire career in the Anglican Church has been marked by her stance at the forefront in the implementation of female orders. Described as, quote, a pioneer in the spread of equality between the sexes, which is diabolic, Wells began her theological training at Cambridge University's Corpus Christi College before the Anglican Church had even voted to allow female so-called priests. Wells was made an Anglican deacon in 95 and a priest in 96, the latter being just 4 years after female priests were allowed, and only 2 years after the first woman was ordained. You see how that worked? Read those dates. 2 years after the first woman was ordained, 2 years later, which was 4 years after female priests were allowed. So the Anglicans got women deacons, and then 2 years later, women priests. This is what Francis wants. So when Pocher says he's planning women deacons, but he's not, there are no immediate set plans, this is what he means. We have to plan this out wisely so that the dummies, the ordinaries, the plebes, common man, common woman in the Roman Catholic Church don't get too angry. After female bishops were permitted in 2014 and first created in 2015, Wells was made Bishop of Dorking. It's a harsh place to hail from. She described her desire for female priests as being not so much a feminist issue as a matter of biblical interpretation. Oh, what? On which it seems to me there is room to differ. It's funny they never make the claim that there is no room to differ from them. I mean, you can't. When it's like, no women, shut up in church, never teach, we don't want to hear from you, women remain silent, submissive. They're never going to claim it means the dead opposite with no gap for interpretation. They're always just going to say, oh, we could agree to disagree. As noted in a 2017 interview she gave to her alma mater after her ordination, Wells became the first female dean in the UK at Clare College. In 2013, she became chaplain to the Archbishop of Canterbury, first woman ever in that office. And when last year, which was 2016 when she's saying this, she was consecrated at Suffragan Bishop of Dorking under the Bishop of Guildford, Andrew Watson, another Corpus alumnus. She became only the 10th woman in the church. Anglicans think they're the church. In the church's history in the episcopate, and the first from our college. Wells is now, that's the end of the dense quote, Wells is now a key figure in the ecumenical sphere as a bishop for episcopal ministry in the Anglican Communion, and as such, she has interacted closely with the Holy See on a number of interreligious events, such as the Kazakhstan Congress of Leaders. Commenting on her presence before the Pope and the C9, Deacon Nick Connolly, who we interact with some on Twitter, wrote that Catholics, quote, couldn't have a stronger signal that Bergoglio is planning the faux ordination of women deacons with a trajectory toward the faux ordination of women priests and bishops. As noted by Wells herself, I keep meaning to stop, but this is all gold. I haven't read this part. As noted by Wells herself, the progression from female priests to female bishops in the Church of England was simply a matter of time. Dense quote, matter of time. So I promised I wouldn't do this like a FM DJ. I thought we had to bide our time to have sufficient women priests with the right experience to be seen to be offering leadership. then it just becomes common sense. It becomes blindingly obvious because the leadership is hampered without them. She stated in 2017. What a wreck. What a wreck. All right, that's not the whole article, but it's a Lifeside article that is worth checking out also, and I read you about the first half of it. Now, okay, back to the other article. Pocher added that Francis is changing the way of thinking and living the difference between the ordained ministry and the baptismal priesthood. He's literally doing what I said he would do. He would use the fact that everyone's baptized to justify saying women need to have a stronger role, and he will use a bodily posturing that is vague in order to transmute the role of women in the church from nothing, please be quiet, ladies, and just be receptive and listen, to something very large, actually something identical with the ergonomics of the episcopus, the bishop. Extending to all the baptized some rights that until recently belonged to bishops, priests, or religious. This is what the God of Surprises business is about. Pocher stated that the Pope had asked her to organize the meeting, presumably meaning in terms of organizing the guest presentations, which she made alongside Wells, who you just heard about, the Anglican quote-unquote bishop, quote-unquote Anglican church, quote-unquote bishop, Wells, and a Catholic religious, Julivia de Bernardino. I thought, she said, it would be interesting to confront the experience of the Anglican church in this regard, Pocher stated, explaining why she invited Anglican prelate Jo Bailey Wells. Pocher revealed she asked Wells to discuss, quote, what kind of process they followed to arrive at the decision to ordain women and to tell how this has changed life in their church, the Anglican church. So what she did was to relate an experience which we then discussed with the cardinals and the Pope. That's lovely, Linda. What a lovely woman. Meanwhile, Berardino was tasked by Pocher with speaking on the possible ministries for women in the Catholic Church, on the possibilities that are really feasible now in the Catholic Church. Wow. While outlining the Pope's alleged personal support for female deacons, Pocher added that, quote, there is no reflection on the priestly ordination of women in the Catholic Church. Well, that comes 2 years later, guys. And you, who have stiff necks and are heart of hearts and have cotton in your ears all the way to the eardrum, are probably saying there will never be women priests. That's how dumb people actually are. And you only learn it when you present stuff factually and actually and quite accurately, the way we do here on Rules for Retrograde, out on the internet. People are like, well, yeah, but there aren't going to be priests. I just told you the path, man. I sound like Joe Biden when I talk like that. I just told you the path, man. They're going to do this probably around mid-year. I'm guessing late spring, maybe June, probably not too late into the summer. They're going to ordain, quasi-ordain ladies, the dames, as deacons. And then they're going to say, oh, wait, these trads just hate Francis. We don't even know why. He is so orthodox. He held the line on communion for the civilly divorced and remarried, didn't he? He held the line on the March 2021 document against blessing two Skittles guys at once, didn't he? He held the line on that. James Martin just the other day said, I followed all the limitations once again, by the way, and he did the exact same thing. And guess what James Martin is? He's right, according to Pope Francis. Francis held the line on communion for divorced and civilly remarried. Not. He held the line on blessings for the Skittles people. And he's going to hold the line here on women deacons. And how dare you say otherwise? Ye of little faith. And I mean, the thing is, they'll wag their finger in your face, and they'll say this. I mean, this is what was funny about my conversation with Mexican Rocky on Thursday night. He said that to me, and Steph was, we were on our walk around our neighborhood, and Steph was just laughing. Because he was like, well, here, I want to challenge you. And I was like, okay. And I'm throwing around names, dates. I was like, did you know this happened on February the 18th, 2016? Did you know this happened at the opening of the Ordinary Synod in October of 2014, Extraordinary Synod? First week, October 2014. No, I didn't know. Did you know what was a line taken right out of the Relatio midterm report of 2014? Do you know what even the liberal fathers at the Ordinary Synod in October 2015 were complaining of the third day of that synod, of the second family synod? Even the liberals there were like, they're changing the rules in order to do their agenda thing. Do you know what Cardinal Casper was caught saying about the African bishops at those two cardinals? Like racist things that would beleaguer the ears of boomers. What Cardinal Casper said about they're just Africans. Well, Pope Francis says this stuff publicly anyway, so everyone knows it. Well, they're just Africans. That's why they can't deal with Skittles. White people love Skittles. Isn't that the best candy? Africans don't deal well with Skittles on their little continent there. They talk about them really, really roughly. But anyway, Mexican Rocky didn't know any of this stuff, and he was kind of, politely wagging his finger in my face. Then he just sat there and got up auditory paddling because he didn't know. The only people that defend Francis have no clue of the historiography of what's taken place in this pontificate. It's like arguing with Protestants. Remember what G.K. Chesterton said about Protestants? They're only Protestants because they don't know history. They have zero knowledge of history. If you have any knowledge of history at all over the last 2,000 years of salvation history, what are you? You're Catholic or Eastern Orthodox. There are theological issues that are requisite to parse between Catholic and Orthodox, and the Orthodox tend to have a very literalist, superficial understanding of things like filioque, not understanding the role of Charlemagne, all these guys. But they know their history. It is an area of legit interpretation where don't be superficial. But if you know history, you will be Catholic or Orthodox. If you're a Christian and you don't know history, like even cursory history, you probably will be a Protestant. Oh man, my faith goes all the way back 2,000 years. No, actually it doesn't. You cut up the Bible. You made up new stuff. You made up new doctrines in the 1500s. You literally said, your guy, Martin Luther, said, if you destroy belief in the Eucharist, you destroy Christianity. Now most Protestants don't believe in it. They said Mary is the mother of God. She's the queen of heaven. Calvin said that. You don't know it. You're on an ahistorical crash course if you're a Protestant. Well, if you are a Pope splainer, you are on an ahistorical crash course. I can't tell you how many Pope splainers I talk to behind the scenes. They're on an ahistorical crash course. It's embarrassing for them. Sincerely. And the difference between me and most of these guys who are out there doing the Catholic stuff is I try to talk to people one-on-one. Right, Steph? Yeah. I try to give them a call. I try to at least give them a DM, a fair hearing. And most of the time it's them hearing me, and then they don't have anything to say. But a lot of these other Catholic guys that are out here talking, they'll say something. I respect Tim Gordon. And then I'll be like, okay, I try to talk to him. I try to talk to him behind the scenes. A lot of the ones that I try to talk to that won't talk to me, a lot of them are people I used to work with. But even like a very, very, very deeply held feminist position, Lila Rose, she was in our chat or something one day or tweeting at us while I was going live. She's like, we need to talk, Tim. She says it publicly because she knows her position's bad. Then I'm like, let's talk. Come on the show. We could talk privately. Me, you, and Steph will talk private. Whatever. Just crickets. Well, good for Mexican Rocky. He actually wanted to talk, but it was quiet as crickets when he was just listening to how wrong he is. And then do people come off the position then? That's when you find out if they have hardened hearts. All I was explaining was I don't know precisely what the signification of the Francis pontificate is. I don't claim to know. I don't say I'm sure this is the secret of Fatima that was never revealed. This could be it. It could be Francis. It could be everything that's happened since about, I don't know, Vatican II. I don't know. It's plausible, but unlike a lot of trads, I don't say I know. All I know that I know is where Francis is going, where he intends to go. He intends to make good, not break faith with his shareholders, his kingmakers, on the Gaulian agenda. And I know it well, and Julia Meloni and others like Julia really made clear what his agenda is, and I know that. Now, I don't know it as an apodictic fact. I know it as a speculative fact. It's a bit of a contradiction in terms, but I'm very confident about it. I'm not confident about what the meaning of the church in the last 60 years is. But what I can confidently say is stay here, stay in Rome. If you go to Canterbury or you go to Constantinople for your Christian faith, then you're borrowing against the actual poison that Francis is introducing into the church. Communion for the divorced and remarried, well, that comes from Constantinople. That's the EOs, man. Casper literally got that from the EOs. Divorced and remarried. Contraception. Oh, that might be the sixth Gaulian agenda item they don't talk about so much. A lot of those guys are contraception mavens. They will get the foro interno from the EOs if they do it. The priesthood of all believers being played upon now that Linda Pocher and Francis are using to get female deacons in the Catholic Church, they got that from Canterbury, from the Anglicans, from Protestants. Don't go to Constantinople or Canterbury. Stay in Rome, even though our Pope is crazy at best. Stay. That's my message for you. That is all we're bold, yet we're faithful here on Rules for Retrogrades. That's the point. And part of what keeps us faithful is a bit of Eastern-looking apophaticism. Be willing to know what you know and know what you don't know and parse between them. I don't know what the meaning of these things are. I do know Francis is the Gaulian Pope. I do know he's trying to break faith. I bet everything I have on this stuff. I don't know what it means that number 266 is this bad. But it's a fact. I bring receipts. I bring names and dates. That's why this second Catholic feminist, Berardino, was tasked by Pocher, Linda Pocher, the head Catholic feminist, was speaking on the possible ministries for women in the Catholic Church, on the possibilities that are really feasible now in the Catholic Church, expand those. While outlining the Pope's alleged personal support for female deacons, Pocher added that there's no reflection on the priestly ordination of women in the Catholic Church. Remember that? That's what got me off on this little screed. She also stated, Pocher, that while the C9 cardinals were, quote, very willing to listen, end quote, and a rich and open dialogue took place, there was no unanimous support for the female diaconate. This is part of the way that Francis cooks. He says, we're talking about it. We're just trying to understand it. Communion for the divorced and civilly remarried, because this has already happened. Not everybody is with me on this. There's a lot of pushback. I just want to listen. In 2014, he said, look, I want you guys to hear Casper, who's the heterodox one on it. I want you to try to understand his heterodox leanings. In 2015, he had Cardinal Casper go on Raymond Arroyo's show. I've played you clips of this show before, saying, I'm out. The Orthodox people in the C9 won out. There will be no communion for the divorced or remarried. And it was a ruse because within a year's time, Francis went back to actualizing the heterodoxy, which he did. So when you hear that there is no unanimous support for the female diaconate, dummy pope-splainers who are in this position for the first time, I guess they'll just be shocked the way we were all shocked in 2016. Francis is a registered, certifiable liar. He will, and I mean specifically about, he'll say, I will not give communion to the divorced and civilly remarried. He said that many times in 2015. 2015 was the year, do you remember this, Steph? The year of Francis going, there will not be communion for the divorced and civilly remarried. He just said it time after time after time. It's part of the way he cooks. And then in 2016, he goes back on it and he never addresses it. That's what's happening now. But he's not even saying it that hardcore. Some were less open, according to this article, than their fellow cardinals at the meeting, says Pocher, citing that such opposition was perhaps linked to culture and cultural norms, in a comment likely aimed at Francis's leading prelate, Cardinal Fridolin Ambongo, who led resistance to fiducia supplicans based on Africa's cultural stance. Remember, they demeaned the Africans for being real, true, believing Roman Catholics. The Africans, they just have this culture that they can't understand this stuff. It's too above their head. It's not above their head. It's literally just dude on dude action. That's all it is. When we're talking about fiducia supplicans, it's saying that dude on dude action is okay. It's not above their head. And Bongo seems like a smart enough guy. So does Cardinal Sarah. So do all of the African prelates. Seem plenty smart. And it's not that difficult to understand. Special interests, lobbies for interests that are special, meaning outlier. And that's all this is. It's the nature of Machiavellian power. Nothing is going over Ambongo's head. The cardinals who are on the council are all pastors of local churches, she said. So they also come burdened with the sensitivities of their own people. Special interests, Machiavelli, power, way of the world. Just think these things. When they try to christen, sanctify, dress up, special interest as more than that, they're going to be like, I'm just coming to you from my church. I have this special ministry of these holy, great people that just want dude on dude. That's all it is. It's special interest. It's corrupt. Think the worst aspects of Washington, D.C., the cesspool on the Potomac. It's all it is. It's corrupt. Corruption. At work, cooking, lobbying. Lobbying in front of your very eyes and making themselves feel fine about it and making you feel fine about it. They're all pastors of local churches, so they also come burdened with the sensitivities of their own people. They're not their own people. Their own people might be who they look like or they talk like. That they're talking about their special interest, irrespective of whose people they are. James Martin, you know who his people are. We're not talking about his ethnic group, his kinship group, or all people who share his Roman Catholic faith. Technically, he's a Roman Catholic. They're talking about his special interest. Skittles men. Linda Pocher's talking about her special interest. Female truck drivers with flat tops and Tivas. That's who's her special interest. Feminists. Pocher argued that the question of women in the church takes on different nuances, noting that in some countries, there's still a lack of opportunities for them to study. Well, that's great. Thank you. You didn't have to say that. That's really nice, Linda Pocher. That's amazing. She said, so we have to focus on that first. In other countries, however, we know that there is an explicit demand for greater participation at the church level and also through the ministry, she stated. An explicit demand means that one person could be in a giant country of millions, said, I demand explicitly that there is greater participation at the church level. And Pope Francis could have written that on a note card and told one of his lieutenants to go stand in that country and to read it out loud, to orate it. And then it becomes true. that there's explicit demand for greater participation. That's what synodality is all about. One person in an otherwise hostile environment state some proposition that everyone hates, and then you can be like, well, there's demand. This is the vox populi. Now listen to this. This is what's really valuable about this section of the Lifeside article. In his 1994 apostolic letter, Ordinatio Sacerdotales, Pope John Paul II wrote, I declare that the church has no authority whatsoever to confer priestly ordination on women, and that this judgment is to be definitively held by all the church's faithful. That's interesting. Francis, JP2 made such a strong claim because he really set up Francis in a lot of ways. Please subscribe to this channel if you're enjoying this, by the way. We need 89 more subscribers. We want to do this 50K show. I'm at the point of panhandling in the streets for 89 more. In 2002, the Vatican's International Theological Commission wrote, after much study, that two things. Before I get to them, once again, please subscribe to this channel. Just do it. Okay, here's what in 2002 the Vatican's International Theological Commission wrote. Remember, this is 8 years after JP2 basically made an infallible claim in Ordinatio Sacerdotales. One, they wrote this. The deaconess is mentioned in the tradition of the ancient church as evidenced by the right of institution and the functions they exercise. We're talking about people like Susanna, Joanna in Acts of the Apostles. Were not purely and simply equivalent to the deacons. They're not deacons. They were helpers. This is a pros-hen-equivocal term. Deacon means helper in Greek. If you say capital D deacon, this means a special kind of ordained helper in the Catholic Church, a helper within a helper. And they've played since at least 94 on the ambiguity between lowercase d deacon and uppercase d deacon. And the Vatican's International Theological Commission, 8 years after 1994, wrote that they're not the same. Susanna and Joanna and the other female deacons in Acts of the Apostles were just sandwich makers. Sorry, ladies. Not just. Sandwiches are important. Men need sandwiches to do important things, so you have an efficient causal power to help them, give them the ATP they need to go around and wage crusades on all the world's non-believers. Secondly, the unity of the sacrament of holy orders, unity meaning deacons, priests, and bishops are not ontologically separated the way any holy order is separated from a lay person. The unity of the sacrament of holy orders in the clear distinction between the ministries of the bishop, priests on one hand, and the diaconal ministry on the other is strongly underlined by ecclesial tradition, especially in the teaching of the magisterium. Meaning, if you let women into the diaconate like cockroaches, if you let them into your anteroom, they're going to be in your den and your kitchen as well, the den being the priesthood and the kitchen being the episcopate. In 2018, this Lifeside article says, the prefect of the CDF, Cardinal Ladaria Fair, who got fired for holding the ground on no Skittles SS blessings, defended the teaching of Ordinatio Sacerdotales as bearing the mark of infallibility, which John Paul II, having formally confirmed and made explicit, so as to remove all doubt, that which the ordinary and universal magisterium has long considered throughout history as belonging to the deposit of faith. So you can't change it. Francis will, though. Here's the last section of this great article. Very informative article up yesterday. The Pope's position and the Synod's urgent calls. The Holy See Press Office has not provided... Oh, by the way, please subscribe to this channel. Wait, not that. Wait, where's the thing? Never mind. Wait. The Holy See Press Office has not provided comment on Pocher's description of the Pope's alleged support for female deacons, nor is any clarification expected, given the practice of remaining silent even in light of controversial interviews such as those conducted by the late Eugenio Scalfari. I love this throwback. I feel like maybe, you know, I have friends at LifeSite that are writers that watch the show. Maybe I'm helping to keep alive the idea that Francis did these 11 interviews with Scalfari, and that the normies got away with characterizing Francis's 11 interviews with Scalfari as, well, the Vatican did speak afterwards on them. No, they never disclaimed anything. The Vatican spokesperson would come out after one of these interviews or another, and they would say, well, this isn't exactly what Francis said. It's most, Scalfari was just repeating what he heard Francis say, which is kind of a confirmation, not a denial. So I'm glad that they recharged the politics in this little offhanded remark, the politics of the Scalfari interviews with Francis. Scalfari claims, using his status as a very well-respected journalist in Europe, using his respected mode of journalism, which is no notes, no shorthand even, no recording instruments, just reconstruction of the words of the interviewee, that Francis told him not only is hell not real, do souls evaporate if they are condemned, no hell, but also that Jesus was not God while he's man. Vatican never explicitly denied this. This is who you're dealing with in Pope Francis. Just last week, Pope Francis spoke to the Dicastery for Divine Worship about how the, quote, woman herself was a very great symbol in the church as a woman without reducing it to ministeriality. Such comments were interpreted as papal arguments against advocating for female deacons. Of course, he does this. Lean into it. Francis does this and then goes back on it. Indeed, in a book-length interview released last year, Francis strongly argued against female deacons or priests. Against them. Yeah, I'm not... Pope Splainer's like, see? No, keep listening. He argues against that which he eventually reifies. Somehow it works. Most people are dumb. I don't understand it. Somehow the dummies just have no memory, and this stuff works. On the topic of female priests, Francis stated that, quote, this is a theological problem that if attempts were made to include women in the priestly ministry could, quote, undermine the essence of the church. See, what he's also doing when he says this stuff, he says, look, if I gave you everything you wanted, if the Dark Lord Sauron is defeated and Aragorn made king and everything that you hope happens comes to pass, as Elrond tells Arwen, then I understand this would mean X. That's what Francis just did. If all this stuff that these dames are hoping for happen, then it would mean X. It would mean the church is like seriously troubled. He's saying that now. And then he's going to go do all of those preconditions, meaning he, with full scienter, full knowledge, is embracing the destruction he's wreaking on the church, because that's what X is. He's like, this all means X if this happens. He'll do it sometime this year, and then we'll know that he knows that it means X, which is destruction. This is why it's not reading his heart or reading his soul or any fruity language that Pope Splainers will use. He says he understands that if he does this heterodox thing, X, Y, or Z, SS blessings or communion for the divorced and civilly remarried or female deacons, he knows it'll ruin the church or at least a portion of it for a generation or so. And then he goes and he does it. I would bet my life on this stuff. I wouldn't quite bet my life he's going to do this. I'd bet a large sum of money he's going to go through with it. But on whether or not communion for the divorced and civilly remarried was an op that he had planned for, I bet my whole life on it. It's a done deal. It's a fait accompli. Nevertheless, Francis has opened the door to confusion on the issue in the past by establishing 2 commissions to discuss the topic of female deacons, despite Catholic teaching on the topic being clear and unchanging. The first was a 12-member commission to study the issue of women deacons in August 2016. I remember this well, because it was just a few months after Amoris Laetitia had come out, and guess what? It was 1 month before September of 2016 when he confirmed that he meant heresy. He meant the material heresy of Amoris Laetitia, and it became kind of formal heresy, which included leading advocate of ordaining women deacons, Phyllis Zagano, I remember that name, and Cardinal Luis Ladaria Ferrer as its president. Now, Ladaria was sort of the token semi-conservative. The second meeting was set up 4 years later in 2020 in light of the 2019 Amazon Synod, but neither has published their findings. Now, here's why I read this article all the way to the end. To 2016, there's a kind of study commission set up. Outgoing CDF was there. And then 2020, the year after the Amazon Synod. Remember the Amazon Synod is where I had that bet that they would do female deacons? With Eric Sammons, we had a public bet going, a wager. I lost that one, but even Sammons is like, well, I know they're going to do it, though. And even Sammons agreed. I think he didn't make me pay up because he's sympathetic to the view. They just didn't do it because everything got kind of rushed because of COVID. They wanted more time to cook. But I was wrong. I lost that bet. If I have to, I forget, mow my lawn in my wife's dress or something like that. That used to be considered embarrassing. As a bet Homer has with Flanders, then that's fine. I'll pay up. But Sammons agrees with me, for what it's worth now, about this stuff. I mean, we all know where they're going. The 2020, now here's why these two 2016 and 2020 respective commissions on women deacons are important. They haven't yet published their findings. The 2023 Synod of Synodality interim report in mid-October of, a few months ago, 4 months ago, called for the results of both studies, the 2016 one and the 2021, to be presented when? October 2024 Synod meetings. In light of the 2023 Synod meeting calling for theological and pastoral research on the female diaconate to continue. Now, I'll make one comment on this that goes against my prediction in a second. Last paragraph. The 2023 Synod report contained numerous calls for more women to assume governance roles in the church, a topic deemed to be, quote, urgent. End of article. Now, the one thing that surprises me, everything is unfolding as I've predicted it. Not as I planned, because I'm not Darth Sidious, but as I predicted it, and no, I'm not happy that the bad stuff is happening. Yes, it's vindicating, but no, I'm not happy about it. But the one thing that goes against my prediction is if they're going to, at the October 2024 Synod, read these findings, that might mean they're waiting until after the October Synod of this year to make the deacons. I think they're going to make female deacons a thing before the October 2024 Synod. I still think that, but why? What would be the point of presenting their findings at the Synod unless they're using that as the final push? I don't know. There is a science to predicting Francis's heresy, but it's not a precise science. It's not a precise science. So we'll see. Open to correction and differential interpretations on that one. We'll have to wait and see, but it's definitely happening. It is definitely happening. Pray for the church every day. What I do, I used to do it sparingly and begrudgingly, only every few rosaries, but now every full rosary I say, I pray for the Pope, for the conversion of the Pope, because the Lord can turn his heart I'm reminded of Michael O'Brien's novel, Father Elijah. He's tasked with turning the heart, converting the mind and rational will of the Antichrist. I'm not saying they're one and the same thing. I'm just saying you can forestall, as a Christian, the coming of the scourge by forestalling the coming of an evil man, or the plans of an evil man, by converting the evil man to a good man. So pray for the Pope. This is not something for Pope splainers. Pope splainers are probably, what are they, offering prayers of thanksgiving that the Pope has done all this evil? I guess that's a Pope splainer. Remember, Michael Lofton said someone made a joke that he probably wants Tucho Fernandez as the next Pope, and he said, sure, or something on Twitter. They want the evil, evidently. But we're like, we don't want the evil. We want the Pope to be Catholic for the sake of many souls, and even his. Pray for Pope Francis. Every chance you get, he needs your prayers. He is steeped in evil. He is committed to the economic interests of evil and the plans, the long-hatched plans of the infiltration of the church. Think Alta Vendita level of planning. Who knows what multinational groups are behind the WEF plan to make the Pope the point man for the left in the world, represented by Francis. Pray for this man. Pray that God gives him the clarity and the strength and the courage to reverse his evil schemes. God wills it. Deus Vult.